Welcome to Sinister States.
My name is Daniel Reeves. I work nights at a storage facility just off Route 19. About 10 minutes outside of town, most people pass through without noticing. It's a kind of place you don't think about in instant need. Rows of metal doors, gravel lanes, chain link fences topped with rusted wire, and a single office building, a flickering sign hums louder the core it gets. It's not talkie work. You clock in, check the cameras, log any late access entries, and do perimeter walks every hour. Most nights, nothing happens. People store things they don't have space for. Furniture, boxes, old memories they want to throw away but don't want to look at here. You lock it up, hit the safe, and gone. That's how it's supposed to be. My shift starts at 10 p.m. By then, the office is closed, the gate's locked, and anyone still inside has already signed the late access waiver. It used to quiet fast. No traffic, no voices, just wind dragging across the metal youths and the occasional clank as soon sells. The facility has 12 rows, labeled A through L. Each row has about 20 years on each side. The numbers run in order, A1 to A40, B1 to B40, and so on. It's clean, organized, predictable. Except for row G. Row G sits at the far end of the property, past the last security light. The bulbs out there burn out faster and else, and maintenance no seems to get around to repleting for long. The cameras cover it, technically, but the feed is stacked up hills. Nothing major, it's enough to make a nose. That's where you at 17s. I know anything by where I started. To me, it was just another door and another row. That chain, my first night. Before I clocked in, the day manager handed me a clipboard, the usual paperwork, incident logs, access codes, emergency contact. They say smother she across the dust. Let me, no other. Keep this on you, hither. I glanced down. 6 lawns, each one labeled as a rue. I almost laughed. Thought it was a joke, some kind of initiation thing for new hires. Read it before midnight, he added. Something about the way he said made me stop smiling. I folded the sheet and slipped it in my jacket pocket. And read right away. First night on the job, he focused on the basics. Learn the layout, memorize the camera angles, get a feel for the place. The first few hours were exactly what I expected. The office smelled faintly of dust and old paper. The monitors lined the back wall, each one showing a different angle. Gate, entrance, rows, perimeter fence. I sat there, watching nothing happen. Every now and then, a car would pass in the road outside. Headlights came briefly across the fence before disappearing. And 11 p.m., I do my first work. He grabbed the flashlight, step out into the cold, and follow the path between the rows. Gravel crunches under your boots. A breath fawns in front. The metal doors fleck the light in dull, uneven patches. Row A. No. Row B. No. By the time I hit row G, there's a ray thing behind path. That's why I noticed it. Unit 17. The door was open. Not wide, just a few inches. Enough that the latch wasn't fully engaged. I stopped, checked my watch. 11:17 p.m. Late access customers are supposed to be gone by 10:30. Anyone still inside after that gets logged. There was nothing in the log. I stepped closer. The inside of the unit was dark. No latch, no movement. Just a thin strapped block between the door and the frame. I reached out, pushed it shut, and slid the latch in place. Metal clicked against metal. Simple. I turned around and finished the rest of the walk. When I got back to the office, I sat down, pulled the laminate sheet out of my pocket, and finally read it. 6 lines. The first one read, Rule 1. If Unit 17's open, do not close itself. I stared at it for a second longer than he should have. Then I looked back at the monitors. Row G. Unit 17. Closed. I told myself it didn't matter. I had already done it. It was probably some outdated instruction. Something left over from pre-Cincy, and no one replied. And so I told myself. At 12 a.m., I did my second walk. Everything felt the same. Cold air, quiet roads, flashlight coming through the dark. When I reached row G again, I slowed down without meaning to. Unit 17 was open, same as before, same few inches. I stopped in front of it, my breath catching in a way I couldn't quite explain. I knew I'd closed it. I remembered the sound, feel the latch. I stepped closer, careful this time. The gap lit darker than it should have, not just unlit, deeper. I leaned slightly, trying to see inside. Nothing. No shapes, no stored items, just empty darkness. Then I remembered the rule. If Unit 17's open, do not close it yourself. I stepped back, stood there for a moment, listening. The wind moved through the row, brushing against the metal doors with a low, high sound. I turned around and walked away, faster than before. Back in the office, I hadn't sat right away. I stood in front of the monitors, watching row G. Unit 17 stayed open, didn't move, didn't change, just sat there. At 1 a.m., I didn't want to do a walk. A job is a job. I grabbed the flashlight again, stepped aside, and followed the same path. Row A, row B, row C. Each step is heavier. I tumbled reached row G, my grip and flashlight tight enough that my knuckles ached. Unit 17 was closed. Not slightly open, not misaligned, fully closed. The latch was down. It stopped. Something about that felt worse. I approached slowly, every instinct telling me to turn around and go back. The metal door looked normal, same scratches, same feed peen. I reached out, hovering my hand just above the latch. Then, a sound. From inside. Soft. A single knock. I froze. It came again. Knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just deliberate. I knew I was there. The star bag. The lamb-8 sheet for hair in my eye. Rule 1. If you said open, do not close it yourself. Opened it this time, but it had been closed, and now something was inside. Knock. The third died. Slow. Wade. I turned around and walked away. To run. To do back. Just walk. Back to the office. Locked the door behind me. Sat down in front of the monitors. I kept my eyes on row G. Unit 17 didn't open again that night. But at 2 a.m., on the camera, the latch moved. Slowly. On its own. In the door E-zone just enough to create that same narrow gap. Something inside shifty. Not outward, not toward the door. Deeper, like it was making room. I didn't do another walk after that. I stayed in the office until my shift ended, watching that one camera feed like it might do something worse if I looked away. At 6 a.m., the morning manager arrived. I didn't say much, just canged over the log, clocked out, and left. As I stepped outside, I glanced back toward row G. In the daylight, everything normal, quiet, empty. Unit 17 was closed, like nothing happened. I went home, slept for a few hours, and came back that night with the laminated sheet already in my hand. I read the first rule again, slower this time. Then I moved to the second, and that's when I realized Unit 17 opening on its own? That wasn't the prower. That was just the beginning. I didn't sleep well that day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the gap in the door. Not wide, not threatening, just enough to suggest something was there, just out of sight, waiting. It wasn't the knocking, thing. It was the tying. The way it waited until it was close. The way it sounded intentional. Time I got back to facility at night, I wasn't thinking about the job anymore. I was thinking about the rules. I clocked in at 9:57 p.m., 3 minutes early. The office lights buzzed faintly overhead. The monitors were already on, cycling through the usual feed. The day manager was gathering his things, keys jingling smooth. He asked how my first night went. Didn't need to. He just nodded once toward the clipboard, then toward the lemonade sheet in my hand. "You wet?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. He held my gaze for a second longer than normal. "Good," he replied. Then he left. That was it. No explanation, no warning, just confirmation. I sat down and read the second rule again. Rule 2. You see light on inside Unit 17. Do not look directly into it. A front. Light? There hadn't been any light the night before. Just darkness. Thick enough that it didn't feel like empty space. I folded the sheet and placed it on the desk beside me and stood paying back in my pot, close enough to reach without thinking. At 10:30 p.m., I checked the access log. No late entries, no one on set. Sing for. At 11 p.m., I did my first log. I told myself I wouldn't go to row G right away, that I'd follow the route like normal, keep the routine intact. Row A, row B, row C. Everything felt quieter the night before. Not silent, just reduced, like the world had pulled back slightly. By the time I reached row F, I could already eat. That followed shift, the sense that something had was different. Row G came to view, and I sighed immediately. Unit 17 was open, wider this time, not just a few inches, a foot, maybe more. And there was light inside. Not bright, not high bow or flashlight. It was dim, pale, almost gray, like something glowing through a fide. I stood at the edge of the row. My first instinct is to step closer, to figure out where the light was coming from, to understand it. Then I remembered the rule. If you see the light on inside Unit 17, do not look directly into it. I turned my head slightly, kept the unit in my peripheral vision. It was still there, the glow, faint, stay. I tilted forward, slow, careful. The gravel crunched under my boots, louder than it should have been. The light didn't change, didn't flicker, didn't react. I moved closer, 10 feet away now, still not looking straight at it, just enough to track its position. Then something shifted inside. Not a movement I could define, not a shape, just change. The light bent. That's the only way I could describe it. Like it curved around something that wasn't supposed to be there. My chest tightened. I stopped moving. For a second, I forgot the rule. My eyes started to turn, just slightly, just enough to catch a clearer glimpse. I turned. From inside Ute. A voice. Soft. Close. "Daniel." I froze. The wood lied. Don't echo. Thongha was standing right in front of me, waiting. I forced my eyes wide, turned my head to find. Voice of Rome peeing male beside me. G-17, peeling paint, rust along the edges. Real things, normal things. The light stayed in my peripheral vision, still glowing, still wrong. "Daniel," the voice said again. Same tone, same distance, like it hadn't moved at all. I didn't respond, didn't breathe deeper, didn't shift my stance, just stood. Then the light dimmed, slowly. Not fading, not shut off, just lowering, like something stepping back. The voice didn't come again. I waited 10 seconds, me 15. I turned around and walked away, faster than before. Not running, but close. Right through row F, row E, all the way to yours. I shut the door behind me and locked it, sat down in the chair and stared at the monitors. Row G, Unit 17. The door was still open, but the light is gone, just darkness again. I let out a breath and realized I'd been holding. Checked the time, 11:23 p.m. I hadn't even made it halfway through the first walk. I didn't go back out right away. I stayed in the office longer than a shed, watching, waiting. Nothing changed. At 12 a.m., I forced myself to finish the walk. Everything else is known. No lights, no open units, no sounds. When I reached row G again, I slowed down. Unit 17's closed, complete, latch dying, sane detonated 4. I stood 3 feet away, instant closest time, deep reachward, just watched. Nothing happened. No knocking, no light, no movement. I stood there for a full minute and turned round and left. Back in the office, I sat down and picked up the laminated sheet again. 2 rules, 2 nights, both of them real, both of them necessary. Hapwink wins, hat is panned. I moved to the third rule. Rule 3. If Unit 17 is closed when you arrive, do not stay in row G for more than 30 seconds. I stared at it. Then I looked back at the monitor. Row G, Unit 17, closed. And I realized something made my stomach drop. I'd stayed longer than that, both times. The knocking, the light, the voice, none of that happened right away. It happened after I hesitated, after I stayed, after I tried to understand something that wasn't supposed to. I leaned back in the chair, eyes still locked in screen. The camera feed flared slightly, stag, just for a end. That stabilized hen. Unit 17 moo, didn't open, didn't react. But sat in by felt different now. Not active, not threatening, just aware, like it had nosed me, nosing it. I didn't do another field walk that night. I checked the perimeter, stayed out of row G, watched the monitors. Every hour a look, then one canning. Every time the same. Closed door, no light, no one. But 3:17 a.m., the camera feed got for exactly 3 seconds. When it came back, Unit 17 was open again. No transition, no movement, just open. Like it always been that way. I didn't go out to check, didn't need to. I already knew I'd see. A gap in a door, darkest inside. Wayne. At 6 a.m., the morning manager arrived again. This time he looked at me a little longer. You understand the rules? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, I did. He studied my face for a second. Then he, honest, relieved nod. Good. He walked past me toward the monitors. He paused, just for a moment, looking at row G, at Unit 17, still open. He said, just kept walking. I grabbed my things and left. But before I stepped out the door, I glanced back at the screen, just once. And for a split second, I thought I saw something move inside the unit. Not toward the door, not into light. A deer, like it was shifting further back, making space.
For something else, I started bringing the laminated sheet with me on every walk after that. Not in my pocket, in my hand. Something about having it there, visible, tangible, made it easier to follow. Like if I let it out of sight, I'd forget. Not the words themselves, but the importance of them, the weight. By the third night, I had the first 3 rules memorized. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. I clocked in at 10 p.m. exactly. The office felt smaller than it had the first night, Not physically, just tighter, like the walls had shifted inward a few inches when I wasn't looking. The monitors flickered once as I sat down. Row G came into focus. Unit 17 was closed. I checked the time, 10:02 p.m. I picked up the sheet anyway. Rule 4. If you hear something moving inside Unit 17 while it is closed, do not remain in the building. I read it twice. Then I set the sheet down slowly. That one didn't feel like the others. The first 3 were warnings, conditions, things you could avoid if you paid attention. This one felt final, like a line you didn't get to cross twice. At 10:30 p.m., I checked the logs. Still nothing. No entries, no late access, no reason for anyone to be inside. At 11 p.m., I didn't go outside, not right away. I stayed in the office, watching the monitors. Row A, row B, row C. Everything normal. Then I switched to row G. Unit 17, closed. I stared at it longer than I should have, waiting for something. Nothing happened. At 11:07 p.m., I heard it. Not from the monitors, from the hallway behind me. A soft, metallic sound, like something shifting under pressure. I froze. The office connects to a small storage hallway in the back. Supplies, tools, spare locks, nothing that should move on its own. The sound came again, closer, not loud, just enough to be heard. I stood up slowly, turned toward the hallway. The light back there was on, fluorescent, flickering slightly. Everything looked normal, still. Then, a scrape, metal against metal, dragging. I didn't move, didn't step closer, just listened. It came again, longer this time, like something was being pulled across the floor. I felt my hand tighten around the edge of the desk. Rule 4. If you hear something moving inside Unit 17 while it is closed, do not remain in the building. I turned back to the monitors. Row G, Unit 17, closed. The sound came again, louder, from behind me. I didn't hesitate this time. I grabbed the keys, the sheet, and moved for the door, fast, not running, but close. I unlocked it, stepped outside, and pulled it shut behind me. The cold air hit harder than usual, sharp, real. I stood there for a second, breathing, listening. Nothing. No sound from inside, no movement, just wind moving through the rows. I stepped away from the office and into the open space between the buildings. The gravel crunched under my boots again, grounding. I looked back at the office door, closed, still. Whatever had been inside wasn't anymore, or wasn't moving. I didn't go back in right away. I walked around the perimeter, keeping distance from row G, from everything, just moving, trying to settle the feeling in my chest. At 11:23 p.m., I circled back. The office lights were still on. Nothing looked different. I stood at the door for a full minute before unlocking it again. When I stepped inside, everything was exactly where I left it. Desk, chair, monitors. The hallway in the back, empty. No tools out of place, no signs of movement. I walked slowly to the desk, set the keys down, looked at the monitors. Row G, Unit 17, open. The door had shifted again, wide enough to show the darkness inside. No light this time, just empty space. I felt that same pressure in my chest, but now it was mixed with something else, understanding. Rule 4 wasn't just about the unit, it was about timing, about what happens when something moves when it shouldn't. I sat down slowly, picked up the sheet again, read the 5th rule. Rule 5. If Unit 17 is open and you hear footsteps in row G, do not check the cameras. I blinked, looked back at the monitors. Row G, still, silent, empty. I leaned back slightly in the chair, trying to think, trying to stay ahead of whatever this was. At 12 a.m., I heard it. Outside. Not from the office, from the rows. Footsteps. Gravel shifting under weight. Slow. deliberate. I froze. The sound came again. Step. Pause. Step. Closer, from the direction of row G. My eyes moved toward the monitor automatically. Then I stopped, mid-motion. Rule 5. If Unit 17 is open and you hear footsteps in row G, do not check the cameras. The screen sat in front of me, waiting. All I had to do was look. Just a glance, just enough to confirm. The footsteps continued. Step. Pause. Step. I could track them, measure the distance. They were moving along the row, not fast, not searching, just walking. I kept my eyes fixed on the desk, on the laminated sheet, anywhere but the screen. The sound got closer, louder. Then it stopped, right outside, on the gravel, just beyond the office door. I held my breath, didn't move, didn't blink. Nothing. No knocking, no attempt to open the door, just presence, standing there, waiting. Then a shift, the faintest sound of weight moving, and the footsteps started again, moving away this time, back toward row G. Step. Pause. Step. Slower. Fading. Until they were gone. I stayed still for another full minute, then 2, then 5, before I let myself move. I looked up, careful, slow, at the monitors. Row G. Unit 17 was still open, but something else had changed. The door wasn't just open, it was wider than before, and the darkness inside looked different. Not deeper, not brighter, just occupied, like something had passed through it. I didn't go out again that night. Didn't need to. I already knew the pattern. The rules weren't random. They were connected, each one built on the last, each one preparing you for something worse. I looked down at the sheet again. One rule left. Rule 6. If Unit 17 is fully open, you are already too late. I stared at it. Then I looked back at the monitor. The door wasn't fully open yet, but it was getting there. A little more each time, a little wider, a little closer. And for the first time since I started, I realized something I hadn't considered before. The unit wasn't just reacting to me, it was progressing, changing, advancing. Every night, every rule, every mistake, bringing it closer to something final, something I wasn't supposed to see. At 3 a.m., the camera flickered again, just once. When it came back, Unit 17 hadn't moved, but the darkness inside had shifted. Not outward, not toward the door, but forward, like it was approaching the threshold, slowly, patiently, waiting for the right moment, the right condition, the right mistake. I didn't make one that night. I stayed in the office, followed every rule, did exactly what I was supposed to. And still, when my shift ended, Unit 17 was closer to being fully open than it had ever been before. By the 4th night, the job was gone. Not officially. I still clocked in, still sat at the desk, still followed the routine on paper. But the routine didn't matter anymore. The rows, the units, the logs, they were background now. The only thing that mattered was Unit 17. Everything else felt like it was just there to keep the place looking normal. I arrived early again, 9:52 p.m. The parking lot was empty. The office lights were already on, casting that same dull glow across the gravel. For a moment, I just sat in my car looking at the building, trying to decide if I was actually going to go inside. Then I reached over,
picked up the laminated sheet from the passenger seat and read the last rule again. Rule 6. If Unit 17 is fully open, you are already too late. I stared at it. Then I looked back at the monitor. The door wasn't fully open yet, but it was getting there. A little more each time, a little wider, a little closer. And for the first time since I started, I realized something I hadn't considered before. The unit wasn't just reacting to me, it was progressing, changing, advancing. Every night, every rule, every mistake, bringing it closer to something final, something I wasn't supposed to see. At 3 a.m., the camera flickered again, just once. When it came back, Unit 17 hadn't moved, but the darkness inside had shifted. Not outward, not toward the door, but forward, like it was approaching the threshold, slowly, patiently, waiting for the right moment, the right condition, the right mistake. I didn't make one that night. I stayed in the office, followed every rule, did exactly what I was supposed to, and still, when my shift ended, Unit 17 was closer to being fully open than it had ever been before.
9:57 p.m. I hadn't even clocked in yet. For a second, I considered turning around and leaving, just getting back in the car and driving away. But I didn't. I clocked in, sat down, placed the laminated sheet on the desk in front of me, and waited. 10:30 p.m. No activity. 11 p.m. No changes. I didn't do the walk. Didn't need to. I wasn't going anywhere near row G unless I had to. At 11:12 p.m., the camera flickered. Not a full cut, just a distortion. Static crawling across the screen for a split second. When it cleared, Unit 17 was open. Wider than before, not fully, but close. The gap stretched almost halfway across the frame, and inside, there was no darkness. There was something else. Not light, not shadow, just absence. Like the space inside the unit wasn't holding anything at all, like it wasn't even a space anymore. I leaned forward in my chair before I could stop myself, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand what I was seeing. The image didn't distort, didn't glitch. It just stayed there, open, empty, wrong. Then, movement. Inside the unit. Not outward, not toward the door, but across, like something shifting from one side to the other. Slow, controlled. I froze. The memory of the rules hit all at once. Rule 2, don't look directly into the light. Rule 3, don't stay too long. Rule 5, don't check the cameras. Too late for that one. I was already watching. The movement stopped. The space inside the unit went still again. Then, the door moved. Not opening, not closing, just adjusting. A fraction wider. The metal edge scraped lightly against the frame. I felt that sound in my teeth. I stood up without thinking, stepped back from the desk, like distance would help, like being further away from the screen would make it less real. It didn't. At 11:20 p.m., I heard the footsteps again. Outside, row G, same pattern, step, pause, step. Only this time, they were faster. Not running, but closer together, more urgent. I looked at the laminated sheet, then at the screen, then back at the sheet. I already knew the rule. I didn't need to read it again. I turned away from the monitors, completely, faced the wall behind me. The footsteps got closer, louder, gravel shifting hard under weight. Then, they stopped, right outside the office door. Again, same position as before, but this time, There was a second sound, a soft drag, like something brushing against the metal. The door handle rattled, once, light, testing. I didn't move, didn't breathe deeper, didn't even blink. The handle rattled again, harder. Then, silence. Complete. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. I stayed like that for what felt like minutes, maybe longer. Then, slowly, I turned back toward the monitors. Row G. Unit 17 was still open, but now it was wider than it had ever been. The door was almost fully retracted along the track, only a small section still covering the entrance. And inside, I saw it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough. A shape, standing just beyond the threshold. Not stepping out, not reaching forward, just there, watching, waiting. I felt something shift in my chest. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition, like I had seen it before, or something like it, in a dream, in a memory that didn't belong to me. I stepped closer to the desk before I could stop myself. My eyes locked onto the screen, trying to focus, trying to define what I was looking at. The shape didn't move, didn't react. It just stayed there. And then it leaned forward, just slightly, not stepping out, just closer. And I heard it. Not through the speakers, not from outside, from everywhere. Daniel. My name, same voice as before, same tone. Close, too close. I stumbled back, hit the chair behind me, caught myself at the edge of the desk. The screen flickered, static surged across the image, and for a split second, the unit was fully open, completely. Nothing blocking the entrance, no door, no barrier, just that space and the shape.
Gone. The screen snapped back. The door was still partially closed, like before, like nothing had changed. But I knew better. I grabbed the laminated sheet, hands shaking slightly now, read the last rule again. If Unit 17 is fully open, you are already too late. I looked back at the screen. The door wasn't fully open anymore, but it had been, even if just for a second, even if just on the camera. That was enough. I understood that now. The rules weren't just about what you see, they were about what happens, what crosses over, what gets through, and I had just seen it. At 3 a.m., the camera feed cut again, longer this time, 5 seconds. When it came back, Unit 17 was closed, completely, latched down, like the first night, like nothing had ever happened. But something was different. I could feel it, even through the screen. The unit wasn't empty anymore. It wasn't waiting. It wasn't progressing. It was done. Whatever had been building, whatever had been getting closer, had reached the end. And now, it wasn't inside the unit anymore. The fifth night felt different before I even stepped out of the car. The facility looked the same. Same rows, same lights, same quiet stretch of road leading up to the gate. But something about it had changed in a way I couldn't point to, like a place that had been emptied out and filled again with something that fit, almost perfectly. I sat there for a minute with the engine off, staring at the fence, trying to decide if I was imagining it. Then I looked down at the laminated sheet in my hand. 6 rules. I had followed them, every single one, and it still wasn't enough. I stepped out of the car. The air felt heavier. Not colder, just thicker, like it resisted movement. I walked to the office, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. Everything was exactly where it should be. Desk, chair, monitors, nothing out of place. But the silence was different. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied. I closed the door behind me and didn't bother locking it. If something wanted to come in, it didn't need the handle. I sat down slowly and looked at the monitors. Row A, Row B, Row C, all normal. Then Row G,
Unit 17, closed. I checked the time, 9:59 p.m., 1 minute before my shift. I stared at the door on the screen, waiting for something to happen, for it to open, for it to move. It didn't. At 10 p.m. exactly, the screen flickered, just once, then stabilized. Unit 17 was still closed. I leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly. For the first time since this started, I felt something close to relief. Maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had been building had already happened. Maybe the rules weren't about preventing something. Maybe they were about surviving it. And I had. I picked up the laminated sheet one last time, read through each rule again, slowly, carefully, like I might have missed something, like there might be a line that explained what came next. There wasn't. The rules ended at 6. Nothing about after, nothing about what happens when it's done. I set the sheet down, looked back at the monitors, and that's when I noticed it. Row F, Unit 12. The door was open. I frowned. That hadn't been open a second ago. I leaned forward slightly, checked the feed. No movement, no flicker, just open. I switched to another camera angle. Same thing. The door hung a few inches wide, dark inside. I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, slow, cold, deliberate. I looked back at row G, Unit 17, still closed, still normal. Then row E, Unit 9, open, same gap, same darkness. I sat up straighter. My eyes moved across the monitors. Row D, Unit 14, open. Row C, Unit 3, open. Not all of them, not even most, but enough. Enough that it wasn't random, enough that it wasn't a mistake. I reached for the laminated sheet again, like it might have changed, like something new might have appeared. It hadn't. Still 6 rules, still only about Unit 17. I looked back at the monitors. More units were open now.
One by one, not all at once, not triggered by anything I could see, just happening. I stood up, heart steady, mind catching up. This wasn't about Unit 17 anymore. That had been the start, the origin. But whatever had been inside, whatever had been pushing against that door, it wasn't contained there now. It had moved, spread. I walked to the door of the office, opened it, stepped outside. The air felt even heavier now, thicker, like it pressed against my chest. I looked down the rows. From the doorway, I could see parts of A, B, and C. And I saw them. Doors, open, not wide, not broken, just enough. Just like Unit 17 had been. A gap, an invitation, or an exit. I stepped forward slowly, gravel crunching under my boots. The sound echoed further than it should have, like the space around me had stretched. I stopped at the edge of row C, Unit 3. The door was open, same as the others, same narrow gap. No light, no sound, just that empty space inside. I didn't move closer, didn't try to look in. I already knew better. The rules had taught me that much. Instead, I listened. At first, nothing. Then, footsteps. Not one set, multiple. Different rhythms, different weights, moving between the rows. Not toward me, not away, just moving. Like the facility wasn't empty anymore, like it was being used. I stepped back, slowly, carefully, toward the office. My eyes moved across the rows as I retreated. More doors, more gaps, More units open than closed now. I reached the office door and stepped inside, closed it behind me. This time I locked it, not because I thought it would help, just because it was something to do, something normal. I turned back to the monitors. Every row, every feed, doors opening, one by one. The cameras didn't flicker, didn't distort. They showed everything clearly, too clearly. At 10:17 p.m., Row G came into focus again. Unit 17, still closed, the only one. I stared at it, understanding settling in slowly, heavier than fear, heavier than anything I'd felt so far. Unit 17 hadn't failed. It had worked. It had held whatever was inside until it didn't need to anymore, until it was done. The rules weren't there to stop it. They were there to delay it, to keep it contained long enough for it to become something else, something bigger. I looked at the laminated sheet one last time. 6 rules, all about surviving the process, none about stopping the outcome. The footsteps outside grew louder, closer, more frequent, not approaching the office, just passing by, like I wasn't part of it anymore, like I didn't matter. I sat down slowly, eyes on the monitors, watching the last few closed units begin to shift, latch by latch, door by door, until there were no closed units left, except one. Row G, Unit 17, still shut, still silent, still waiting. And for the first time, I realized what too late really meant. It didn't mean you die. It didn't mean you disappear. It means you stay. You keep working. You keep watching, while everything else changes, while everything else opens, while whatever came out moves freely through the rows, through the units, through the space that used to be empty. And you don't leave, because there's one more rule, one that isn't written down, one you only understand when it's over. If Unit 17 closes again, someone has to be here when it opens.